Kathy Carr, and I am the Family and Consumer Science Agent here in Bailey County, and my friend Mandi Seaton is the Family and Consumer Science Agent in Lamb County. This was a 3-county program that we had intended, or we had told you that was how it was going to be. The third agent was the ag agent from Castro County, and her name is Nancy Anderson. She could not be here today because she had a big ag days out at Friona at a dairy today, so that's why she is not here. We have her cheese and we have handouts for her cheese making, so we'll be sharing those with you today, and her phone number if you have questions to ask her about that cheese making, since Mandi and I do not know one thing about that. Okay? So as we go along, y'all do not hesitate to stop us. I think you all very much know about jams and jellies, so we'll go over that a little bit. But we're also going to go over herbs, and that's something I think we're a whole lot more interested in. So I'll let you go first, Mandi.
Okay. Well, we talked about last fall doing some what we would call backyard basics programming, just things that used to be done a long time ago that maybe have kind of fallen by the wayside and people don't do as much anymore. And Kathy picked that she would do jellies, and I says, okay, I'm going to do some herbs. And so back in the spring, I planted herbs. And what I did, I made a raised bed, and so that it was something I could do myself, I bought cinder blocks, the big blocks with the holes in them. I went and bought cinder blocks and constructed a raised bed in part of my yard out of the cinder blocks. It started out, this is the second year for that raised bed. The first year I had it, I put tomatoes in it, but this time since we decided we were going to do herbs, I decided that's where I'm going to put my herbs, is in that raised bed. When I started out, I had 10 cinder blocks. First I laid down the no weed paper, you know, that cloth looking stuff so weed wouldn't come through it, and I bought 10 cinder blocks. I have help loading them and unloading them because they're a little bit heavy, they're a little bit cumbersome. But I put 2 cinder blocks on the end. I went with 3 cinder blocks going north and south, and I put 2 more on the end. That was my first part of the raised bed. This year I came back and put 2 more going north and south, 2 more across. So I have a little bitty, like a little 12 by probably about 3 space. Then I added 6 more, 3, 3, and 2 across the bottom. So it has like 3 different compartments. Because when I started reading about herbs, I picked which herbs I was going to plant, and so I planted basil and sage and dill and rosemary and oregano and tarragon and thyme. And I planted some mint. I just didn't bring the mint. And the reason I have that little bitty section in there all by itself, which is about 1 by 3, is that is where I planted the mint. It says you want to contain that mint in a place, and I thought, well, those vines cannot go through those cinder blocks. So I put the mint there, and it's a good thing because it's huge. And I just did not bring any of it today. So I had this huge cement block raised bed out there, filled it full of potting soil, and went to work and planted my herbs this time. Like I said, I just went we have an Ace Hardware there in Littlefield, and bought herb plants for $1. And I picked the basil and the sage and the dill and the rosemary and the oregano and the tarragon and thyme, because reading they said they were pretty hardy. And those are spices I use, or herbs I use anyway. So that's what I picked, planted them in there. They got about 1 foot apart. They're in there kind of compact, but it really didn't seem to bother them. The oregano spread on the ground, but it didn't bother the basil, which grew up. They really interacted well with each other. And I cared for it just like I would a vegetable garden. With it being a raised bed and it being shallow, I probably watered it the beginning of the summer a little bit more than I would my vegetable garden, just because we were a little bit drier some months in there, but you just cared for it like it was the garden. I would go out, and I had cilantro in there, and I went and cut it back pretty early and used it. Well, it died. Don't know why it died. Maybe I really cut it back way too much. But if I wanted some leaves, because I'm a spaghetti maker, if I wanted some oregano, I'd just go pick the leaves. Or if I wanted to put some thyme in the whatever I was cooking, or basil, those are really the 3 I use the most. I just go pick the leaves and use it fresh. So I've used it off and on all during the year. But I'm afraid it's going to freeze pretty quick. So I went and I'm going to attempt to dry some. Did you have a question?
Yeah, the cilantro, if you leave a couple of that without cutting and let them seed, those seeds will drop and they're a winter
Really?
plant, so they'll grow back in the wintertime and you'll have fresh cilantro in the wintertime.
So did you pull it up when
No,
it died?
it's still there.
So it might still go ahead
So
and
it might
seed.
So
reseed.
if it, yes, and just let it seed and it'll drop and you'll just keep, I mean, you don't ever have to plant again, you
Okay.
just have cilantro all the time.
Well, that's good to
Awesome.
know.
Especially in the
That's good to
wintertime.
know. Thanks for sharing that. No, I didn't pull it up.
Okay.
I really didn't pull it up. So, okay, that's interesting to know. I know the time will winter. It will winter. The leaves get a kind of a crummy color, not a very vibrant color, but it will winter. The oregano winters, usually. It's going to depend on our winter. The dill is going to be kind of like the cilantro. There's no way I'm going to get all those heads cut off. So I think I will have fresh plants come back from just the seeds next year. But that's nice to know about the cilantro. And I had sage before, and it will winter. So all of those will come back. But thank you for telling me that. Like I said, I don't know what happened to that. But I decided, you know, it's getting close to winter. I may not actually be at home where I can do some harvesting right before I know it's going to freeze. So I went out and picked bunches of it about 3 or 4 days ago. And from reading about it, because like I said, I've never dried any. I've had some herbs before, but I've never dried any. You want to harvest on a warm, dry morning after the dew has evaporated. And that way you'll minimize your plants molding. You want to discard any damaged leaves. And I don't know about at your house, but at my house, the caterpillars are rampant. So I had leaves that had caterpillar holes in them, you know, where they've been chewed. So I was real careful after I cut off big bunches about which leaves I picked off when I brought it in the house. The leaves, the sage and the basil, I stripped off the vine. And it said to lay them on a muslin cloth. I had some cloth in there, something dry that's airy. And at home, I have them on this, and I have them on a cooling rack, like I put cookies on, just up so the air can circulate. And so you can tell when you look at them, and I don't care if you touch them in a little bit, some of them are beginning to dry more than others, but I've kept them like this. These smaller things, it said to put in bunches and hang to dry and tie with muslin. So I have probably about 4 of these little thyme bunches at my house. Tied them, I checked them, and if the stems look pretty healthy, I put them together. I have checked them every day for mold, because you know we've had quite a bit of moisture here lately. And I have one of those old clothes drying racks, you know, it has the wood dowels. They're tied on that in my extra bathroom that nobody used in bathtub, so that they can drip. Or it says you can just put them in paper bags. So I've been transporting these around with me this week, so I just drop them in the paper bag. As they dry, the nice thing about the paper bag, some of the leaves fall off, they fall in here and I can use them. So I've tied bunches of thyme and tarragon and oregano. And man, the oregano just seems to be drying really, really fast. And then the rosemary smells really good. Now I did the dill a little bit different, and I have done dill before. I went out and cut off all the dry heads, and this is probably about 3/4 of the way full of just dill heads. And I'm just going to leave them in here to dry, and because this is how my mother used to do it. How many of y'all do things because that's how your mama used to do
Exactly.
it? You know, this is how my mama used to do it. And when I look in the bottom of this bag, I already have quite a few seeds. So I'm just going to leave this till this dry, and you know, when I just go by and shake it, take seeds, and then I'm going to save the seeds, because if you make pickles, these are the best dill to put in pickles, and it's a whole lot less expensive. That one dill plant cost me $1, and I'm going to have lots of dill. And you know, a little jar of dill seed is really expensive.
About $5.
Yeah. So I've just got to go back out here in the next day or two and cut the rest of the dill off. But it's just in here, and I'm going to shake it, and then I'm going to put it in a container and save.
Mandy, you said that you've been real careful to check for, to see if it's molding. Has anything molded?
Yes. The other day I was checking the tarragon because I think I chopped all this off Friday and Saturday, and Monday before we went over to dim it, there was a couple of leaves of tarragon that was just kind of molded. I just kind of pinched them off and threw them in the trash.
I
Yeah.
didn't know how fast it would might mold.
Now, like I said, we've had so much moisture. Finding a morning when the dew went down has been kind of difficult because we've had lots of dewy mornings. And like I said, they're in the bathroom. Nobody's at my house all day. There's no windows in that bathroom. So it's dark because it says to hang them dry with that kind of in a dark room. And then you're going to let them dry for approximately 7 to 10 days. And so we're going on about 4 or 5 days until they're completely dry and then the leaves begin to sound like crunched cornflakes. And like this one's kind of getting there, parts of it are. So this is kind of an experiment for me also. And so when they get dry, I'm going to go get some of those little dark colored pill bottles. Because if you can, you want to use a darker colored thing, maybe not a glass thing. If you use glass, it just says to store in a dark cabinet. But I'm going to get them, I'm going to crumble them up with my fingers, and I'm going to store them, like I said, in an airtight container and then in a dark place. And that will keep that flavor a whole lot stronger, and that they don't lose their color as much. So like I said, this has kind of been, I've done dill, and I've had the other herbs, but I've never dried them, so this is kind of being an experiment for me. And so when you go to use them to cook, if you're going to use this dry one, the flavor is going to be a whole lot more concentrated than if you used a fresh one. So if it calls like for fresh oregano or fresh basil, you might use a tablespoon. But if you're going to use them dry, use a teaspoon. Then, you know, taste and then season it according to your own taste. Now, one thing I haven't done yet, and I'm still probably, it's going to be one of these weekend things that I'm going to do, hopefully before it freezes, especially the tarragon. I'm going to put it in a bottle and make some of those herbed vinegars.
Okay, that would be great.
I've been reading a little bit about those herb vinegars, and I thought, okay, I'm going to have a special vinegar and all of this stuff. No, everything
It's
I've
plain
read,
old vinegar.
it's plain old white distilled vinegar is the best vinegar to use, because he said using that plain white vinegar gives you the more of the flavor's going to be focused on your herbs instead of the vinegar. Says you can use any herb or spice if you wanted to. Rule of thumb, it says, was to use about 4 ounces of fresh herbs per quart of vinegar. So that's 4 ounces is going to be quite a bunch. So you're going to have a pretty good little bunch there. It says you can use any clear bottle, or really you can use colored bottles if you want to, but your colors may not be as good, that you have. You just want to wash and sterilize your jars or your bottles or whatever. You can use lids, you can use corks. So here's my plan, and I'm just going to share y'all what I plan to do with it, because once you put them in there, you're still not through. You've got another process that you go through. The thing about it, vinegar is such a high natural preservative with the high acidity. You don't have to really worry about the sealing part of it, because that's going to be your preservative to begin with. So if you're going to use a jar, you're going to have the jar and the jar lid. And it says you can cook your vinegar to 80 degrees. You don't want it to boil, put it in there. It should seal. But what you're going to do after you do that, you're going to stick it in a window for 2 weeks and let that kind of ferment, kind of let those flavors mingle. Check it daily, and then take it out, strain, throw those herbs away. Have whatever jar you really want to put it in and keep it in, sterilized, washed. You can reheat that vinegar, put some new fresh herbs in there. You don't have to put any at all if you don't want to. And then when you get ready to seal it, if you're going to use a fancy jar with a cork, dip that cork, put just a little bit of wax around that cork, and that's how you seal it.
Oh.
Wow.
So like I said, I've never done one, but I'm really going to try to do some. And it says some of the typical herbs that you want to use would be basil or dill or tarragon or rosemary. Might want to put some mustard seed in there. One that I'm really going to try to do is the tarragon, and then I'm going to get a lemon and get my potato peeler, kind of peel around it and put some lemon zest in there to kind of give it a tarragon lemony taste. I'm gonna stick it in my window. I'm just gonna put it in a quart jar and then hopefully find a really cool bottle and let it, I'm gonna sit in a windowsill, let it kind of steep for 2 weeks, reheat it, and then I'm gonna reseal it. And just see kind of what happens. Like I said, you can pour that vinegar into a saucepan, hit it to about 80 degrees, and return it back to that bottle after you take those one herbs out. If you want to put some more in there, it says you can, or you don't have to, but you've got that flavored. Another one I want to do is it said to do dill and garlic. Get some garlic pods. So those are two that, as far as doing the vinegars, I want to try and see what happens. And I think it's on October 28th. Kathy's having her Christmas program here that afternoon, or that day at noon. So hopefully my plan is to bring some of those jars of the vinegar just to see what happened.
Are you coming to Morton to do it in Morton?
No, we're not.
No,
So we will want y'all to come over here.
did you used to go to
We'll be working.
Shirley's?
Yes.
It's October 28th? Okay.
If you can't do that, we'll be in Littlefield on the 30th.
I've got my calendar, we can look for sure.
I think we're in Littlefield on the 30th, here on the 28th.
And that night, we're gonna be in Bovina on the 28th. We'll be at lunch here, and that night we'll be in Bovina. And then,
On the 30th, we'll be in Littlefield.
and what about Dimmitt?
That will be the 29th.
29th.
29th and 30th.
Okay.
So my plan is to bring some of the vinegars.
Do you make any oils?
I have not.
Are you going to try to make some oils?
I haven't found the information that's in common enough terms or easy enough for me to understand, that's not so complicated. I don't do real well with complicated or, if it has more than 4 or 5 steps, count me out.
Well, now, chili oil is easy to do, and I have wanted to try that.
A chili oil.
But remember, I like hot. Mandy does not eat
I'm not a
hot.
hot person.
Okay.
And I do.
Okay.
And I think one thing to keep in mind too is like, we could plant a garden if we wanted to in Morton, in Cochran County, but our water has so much arsenic in it, so we cannot drink out of our faucet. So we always have to get bottled water. But I believe that just some information to pass on to somebody else if they asked you. Maybe they could just plant it in little pots and then use bottled water to water them. But because if we were to just give it from the faucet or to just water like that, like y'all normally do, the arsenic is 100%. Because it's not being filtered through your actual water hose. So the water that if we were to drink it from the faucet, it's filtered a little bit. But we completely do not drink it at all from our faucets. So, but if they do it through the water hose, it's even more potent, the arsenic. And what happens is that when you water your garden, and what grows, you're eating all that arsenic is going into your body, into your, your bloodstream and everything.
Is that just in Morton?
As far as I know, in Cochran County, yes, ma'am. Yes.
I did not know
And
that.
so that's something to think about too.
Well, and I know that like the oregano and the thyme and the rosemary, those plants really did not just get huge. And I saw some really neat little container gardens that people would put in their windowsill, just out of tins, old cooking tins and different things. That, I would sure recommend growing rosemary in the window, some oregano. And you can, if you wanted to do some of this, you can buy those fresh herbs in the grocery store.
Okay.
And then just take them home and they're already cut, then you would just dry them.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks for showing that on the
you're
water.
welcome.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Anybody have any comments? Any more questions? Thank y'all. But my goal is to have some of the vinegars when we come to Kathy's program. And here's just some information. Please take one on growing herbs.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
in our job, a lot of things, we have people call a lot of times and ask questions about whether it be canning or something about a garden, and of course they call and ask the men a lot of times things about their trees out in the yard. Well, this book right here is from the Cooperative Extension at the University of Georgia. And this is what we use for all of our answering questions about canning, freezing, preserving. We go to this book. It's called So Easy to Preserve. So I just brought that. I thought that would be kind of something y'all might be interested to see. And we have also recently had a workshop that we learned about different food preservation. So I brought that too. I just thought we would look a little bit at some of that as we're going through and talking about jams and jellies. I know, well, how many of y'all have all made jams or jellies? I figure you all have.
I've eaten it.
You've eaten it. Well, I'm good at eating it myself. You know what? It's the easiest thing in the whole wide world to do, really. The easiest preserving, the easiest cooking. Mandi and I had decided that Sunday afternoon we would play. Both of our husbands were in the field harvesting, so we thought, well, we'd just play. So Mandi came over and I had bought strawberries at the grocery store, just quarts of fresh strawberries. Well, have you ever heard of strawberry jam?
Yeah.
Freezer strawberry jam.
No.
Did not take, I bet, 30 minutes, possibly. Well, in fact, the recipe, and I had the recipe a while ago, it said 30 minutes.
Wow.
30-minute freezer jam.
Wow.
And, but it's just, all you do, you buy your Pectin, and do you know what Pectin is?
No.
You call it Sure Gel when you see it at the grocery store.
Okay.
That box that's like a box of Jell-O.
Okay.
It's with the canning jars. It's called Sure Gel. Well, that's the Pectin, which is what makes the jelly thicken. And I meant to bring a box of Pectin, and I forgot to bring that. But anyway, that is the easiest thing in the whole world to do. That freezer one. You mix that box of Sure Gel with your water and boil it for 1 minute and pour it over your berries that you have mashed with a potato masher, and then added your sugar. You pour that over. You stir it for 3 minutes. And it's ready to go in your jars.
Wow.
Or little plastic containers. And the instructions say that you can you leave that in the refrigerator for 3 weeks, or you store it in the freezer. Great gifts.
Yeah,
great gifts.
Yeah.
That strawberry was absolutely delicious. Wow. I'm not really a strawberry jelly or jam eater. Well, I am now. After eating that, that was absolutely delicious.
Wow.
I've always thought cherry was great.
Oh, yeah.
Apricot was really good.
Yes.
I loved that one. Well, one that we made on Sunday was cherry jelly. And remember, jelly is when you use the juice. Jam is when you use the mashed berries. This is blackberry. This was my mama's very favorite. Well, you may decide to take one of these home with you. I want you to take a jar of something so you can decide. We've got the 3 different kind. Mandi loved the blackberry. She had never had that.
Wow.
So, but this is my mama's favorite. So I've already told her that I've made this, and so some's coming her way, and she was pretty excited about that. But you know, to do jams or jellies, you're just making sure that you've got the 4 things that you have to have. Your fruit, your pectin, which is your Sure Gel, acid, and sugar. And most of your fruits have the acid that you need. Once in a while, you may end up needing to put a little bit of acid, which would probably be lemon juice that you would add to it. And lots of, even on the Sure Gel instructions, it tells you how you can check it if you're concerned about whether you have enough acid. The reason it might not, the only problem would be if it didn't have enough acid, is it might be a little bit runny. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to tell you that on the Sure Gel in the pink box is the low sugar, and that seems to gel really good.
And see, I saw that, and I didn't even buy that because that's not one I've ever used. It said no sugar added.
Oh, okay.
And that's a new thing, I think.
Well, no, you have to put sugar in it, but
No
it's
extra
about-
sugar or something, I
It's
think.
not near as much.
You
Like
bet.
sometimes on a plum is what I do a lot of, and it may take 8 cups of sugar for the fruit, but then on that it'll take like 4.5.
Oh, uh-huh. And it really makes it gel really well.
It gels really good.
So where do you get your plums?
I have a plunger.
Okay,
Oh,
okay.
wow.
How exciting, and that's great.
I make that jelly too. I don't think that much sugar, but it still works.
And it works fine. You use the Sure Gel?
I usually just
Mhm.
jellies and products.
Oh, she does. And the old time regular box is the yellow
I use
box,
that
isn't
for
it?
a lot of things though, that regular box too. Sometimes you want to stick with the original thing.
Yeah, oh yes, sometimes you do. Now, when you're doing yours, when you're cooking your fruits, do you have that colander
Yeah.
with the wooden dowel stick?
Well, for plums and plum
Uh-huh.
seeds, you have to get them out. So
Yes.
what you have left is just the pulp and
Right.
the juice in it.
And the
pulp-
juice goes through.
And the pulp goes through, and that's what makes your jam. But
Okay.
it will be a thick jam.
And I like thick jam. I like that. Well, Mandy and I were recently had gone shopping, and we were at Canton, and I was showing her one of those colanders, and Mandy didn't know what it was, and I said, well, Mandy, that's what you use when you're making jelly. And she says her mother did never use one of those.
Wow.
And so Mandy got one, and she's used it already, and just thought it was wonderful.
For plums and stuff like that are small, you have to have that to get that pulp and the
Right.
juice out.
Well, for 35 years, I just used a regular colander, just a round colander.
And mashed your cherries.
And I would cook my cherries in water, for a little bit to make the juice, and then I'd pour the juice through that colander, and the cherries sit there, and I'd just get a spoon and just mash them like crazy.
It's a little easier to do it.
It's
Yeah,
great
and
in
so
that
we
thing.
saw that, and we knew we were going to do that jelly program, so I bought one. Man, I could smash those cherries. It was really cool.
Can you use one of
Like I
those
said,
rice, what is it
A
called?
rice-
a ricer.
One of those that you,
I don't know that you could do, I'm not sure. I don't know that you could, I don't
I mean,
know.
I have one of those. I don't know if I would.
This
I
one
don't
it's like on a 3-legged thing, and
A
it goes
three-legged
down,
rack.
and it goes down in a cone. And when I got through cooking my cherries, I just threw them all through there, and the juice ran into the pan below, and the cherries stayed there. I could just mash those. I got more juice out than I ever did the colander, but I'm telling you, for 35 years, I just used a round colander and just mashed with a spoon. And my mom never had a jelly. Now, I can remember a long time ago, Mom would cook her cherries, and then she would drain the juice off, and then she would put the cherries in a cheesecloth, and then squeeze the juice out through the cheesecloth and get it that way. But I thought, oh, that's too messy. I'm not doing that. So I just always used a colander.
And lots of people do their juice and freeze that juice and then wait till later to make their jams or make their jelly with that juice. Mother always used to have fruits or juices in the freezer that then she could pull out at any time that she was ready to make jelly. And it's wonderful to have. That's so nice at holidays when your family comes and there's a certain kind that they love and they want, that you make.
yes.
I think that's a fun, special family thing.
And grandkids like bread and peanut butter and jelly in a little basket for Christmas.
Oh, yes, I'm sure they
That's
do.
nice.
Do you do homemade bread to do that?
No, I haven't ever tried that.
I
Y'all
know
can
you
do
can
a
do it.
thing on that.
Okay.
We can do that, because that's not a hard thing to do. Right here in these instructions, it talks about that with no extra sugar, that pink box, and it says, follow the instructions carefully, because it will gel so quickly.
Wow.
So that's interesting about that. But you've got to have your sugar to sweeten the fruit, and then that's going to help gel it. And the sugar also acts as a preservative to keep that from ruining, keeping germs from growing. So you want to remember to do that, and of course it adds to the taste. If it's sweeter, it's bound to be better, right? Now you are not supposed to alter the amount of sugar from that recipe, because a lot of times that will ruin that. And I do remember as a child, we would ask Mother, be sure that you don't, that's runny. We want runny jelly. And we liked it. Mother would have it. It would be cherry. Well, it was cherry syrup that we poured over toast. But we liked it that way as kids. And she said that would be sometime they wouldn't have cooked it quite long enough. And you know, it doesn't always work if you're doubling a batch. It doesn't always work as well. And that's what Mother always said that would be her problem. She'd come to the end and she'd double it right quick. She'd be tired of doing it. She'd double a batch and not get it done exactly right. And then it would be runny, which, like I said, that's how we liked it. Well, when you're starting, you know, you gather your supplies, everything's got to be clean, and your jars sterilized, hot and sterilized. And I have always just run them through the dishwasher, left them in the dishwasher so they're hot, and then grabbed them out when I'm ready for them. And that seems to work just exactly like you want it to. It says that jelly has a fruitier taste if you make it without the pectin. I thought that was interesting because I've never made it without pectin, so I don't know. But it says it is fruitier.
Wow.
So anyway, if you are not adding pectin, it says you need to use 1/4 underripe fruit and 3/4 ripe fruit. So you know, that's just something you can be thinking about as you're making some. But it's just such an easy thing to extract your juice, just like we said. Use that little colander, mash it out with that wooden dowel. Yeah, it's kind of like a dowel rod, so a big dowel rod. Then from juice to jelly, you're just going to be cook your fruits down with your sugar. Then you're going to add your pectin, stir it for however long, at a good boil. You're going to be stirring it however long it says on the instructions. And then it's ready to go into your jars. And then you do your water bath for a few minutes to make sure that it seals just like you need it to. Then you store it in a cool, dark place. Just easy. So how many of y'all plan to make some jelly anytime soon?
Oh, well, I probably will.
But you do it regularly. Do you just, when you do it, do you just do one batch at a time? Do you just think it's time for some?
I followed the recipe pretty close because, you know, it's pretty exact how you have to do that if you want it to gel good. I'll tell you a cute story. I fixed some jam. And instead of doing the water bath, I always just turn my jam upside down and let it seal the lids and then turn it back. And I left that overnight so it had at the bottom of each jar, it had about that much space. And so it never did go back down. When I turned it back up, all the jars still have that empty space at the bottom.
Look right there. Exactly what we did. That is exactly. But you know that gelled so quickly. That was the blackberry jam.
I've never had any gel like that.
It gelled that quickly. But I'm telling you, it was delicious. So, didn't hurt anybody.
And you use blackberries from
I
the
don't
store?
think it will hurt a thing either.
Kathy, did you use blackberries from the store too?
I had bought a big, you know, up north somewhere, they send trucks, people order. Mine was a 14-pound box of blackberries, frozen blackberries, and I had ordered them, and this truck comes this way and delivers them. And when I was a kid, y'all may remember we bought them in gold cans that were frozen. Do y'all remember great big cans? Well, that's how Mother bought them. And I think it's the same company that now is doing them quick frozen, that individually quick frozen. And they're in 14-pound boxes. And that's what this was that we used. They were just the blackberries, no sugar, no anything on them. They were beautiful. I had blackberries and cherries.
But you could buy the blackberries at the grocery
Sure.
store and just wash, and that's what we did on the strawberries. The thing about the strawberries we did 3 recipes of strawberry jelly. We did 1 blackberry and 2 cherries. We did 6 recipes of jelly. But there were 2 of us. We did all that in about 2 hours.
We did, and had it cleaned up.
Yeah.
We had it done and cleaned up, and I was going on to my next project. I was leaving.
Wow.
So it did not take us any time.
Right.
And we were thrilled with it.
Yeah, and I've done the strawberry jelly like we did for y'all with kids. Little kids, small kids, like 1st and 2nd graders.
Oh, wow.
Because they can get that potato masher and they can mash like nobody's business, and really easy, very minimal. And then too, if you have grandkids or kids that need to give gifts for teachers, then they've made it
Yeah.
The
themselves.
freezer kind I've made
How
with the
cool.
kids.
Yes.
How cool. And the cherries, are they the ones with the stem, or you buy the canned, or?
These were just, mine were, now I don't know, Mandy brought the cherries. The cherries I have are large sour cherries is what mine were called, cooking cherries.
Oh, okay,
Not maraschino cherries with the
Okay.
stem.
okay, the cooking, okay.
But I have used the bean cherries in the spring that are in the grocery stores, the big red sweet ones that you just wash and eat off the stem.
And that
I've
would
used
be-
those.
Oh, really?
And that would be off the
And
stem.
even though they
yes.
have the pit?
And that's where, I haven't used them with this new contraption that I got to do
Okay.
it, but that's where I cooked them. I pulled the stem out and washed them real good, put them in a pan and put water in the pan and cooked them with the water to make the juice. And then, like I said, I'd pour that into that colander and the juice would go into the good pan. Then I'd take that spoon and just mash the fire out of those cherries. And it's like she said, the pits stay in that colander.
Ah.
Well, in this new little contraption, the pits are not going to go through those holes,
Right.
but you're going to get every bit of the juice out by just mashing it through that colander. I cook them pits and all.
Wow.
I have.
Wow.
But the ones I did Saturday, they had been pitted.
I have my grandmother's old cherry pitter that you can put the cherries through and turn it, and it pits them for you. And I do have that
Oh,
too.
how neat.
I haven't used it in a long time. Just like Mandy said, you know, what she's bought lately has already been pitted. But
Wow.
still, those are way neat to have.
Yeah, it is neat to have.
It is.
That is neat.
Like I said, you don't have to pit them to cook them. Because to me, if I was going to cook and make jelly, why would I going to go through the step of pitting them? It didn't matter. Because it wasn't going to get in my jelly anyway. So I didn't use the pitter because I could just keep them in the colander.
Wow, okay.
Any more questions? Are you ready to taste some cheese and taste some jam? We just brought some of Nancy's cheese, and I brought some crackers. And we'll open one of those jams over there, and we'll just let y'all have a little taste and
Did
see
you
what's
say you brought a recipe for the?
We've got the handouts for you for the cheese. And like I said, I hate it that she's not here.
Yeah.
That happened. She didn't realize that when we planned this, and so it just did not work for us to change days. So tomorrow she will be in Littlefield if y'all want to come at 2 o'clock tomorrow. We'd be happy for you to come over there.
And there are some jelly recipes
Mm-hmm.
in this
There are.
handout. But to be perfectly honest with you, we used the recipe that was in the Sure Gel
box?
in the Sure Gel box. What do you want to open?
Doesn't matter to me a bit. Just open
Y'all want
some.
cherry, blackberry, or strawberry?
Strawberry.
Strawberry. They say.